I once believed that life prepares you for loss, that time slowly teaches your heart how to accept what it cannot change. I was wrong. Some losses don't arrive loudly. They don't announce themselves with final words or dramatic moments. They slip quietly into your life and settle there, leaving questions instead of answers. This is the story of how someone vanished from my life, how I learned to live with his absence, and how fate returned him to me when I had finally stopped believing it was possible. The morning he disappeared felt painfully ordinary. The sun rose the same way it always did, spilling light across the kitchen floor. The smell of coffee filled the air, and the sound of traffic drifted in from the street outside. He stood by the door, tying his shoes, complaining about how busy the day would be. I remember thinking nothing of it, because nothing seemed different. He kissed my forehead, smiled, and said he would see me later. I watched him leave, unaware that those few seconds would become a memory I replayed thousands of times in my mind. When evening came and he didn't return, I told myself not to panic. People get delayed. Phones lose signal. Life happens. I called his phone once, then twice, then over and over until the calls went straight to voicemail. By midnight, worry wrapped tightly around my chest. By morning, fear had taken its place. I contacted the police, convinced it was all a misunderstanding that would soon be resolved. I believed that by the end of the day, he would walk through the door, embarrassed and apologetic. Days passed without answers, then weeks, then months. The police searched, asked questions, followed leads that went nowhere. Friends and family offered comfort, but their words felt hollow. Every night I stared at the ceiling, wondering where he was and what might have happened. Was he hurt? Was he scared? Was he even alive? Not knowing was worse than any terrible truth I could imagine. As time went on, the world around me slowly returned to normal, even though my own life had stopped. People stopped asking questions. Conversations shifted away from his name. I learned that silence can be incredibly loud. It echoed in empty rooms, in unanswered messages, in holidays spent pretending everything was fine. I smiled when I was supposed to, laughed when it was expected, and cried only when I was alone. The first year was filled with hope. Every unknown phone number made my heart race. Every knock at the door sent me rushing forward. I imagined 1,000 scenarios where he would return, each one ending with relief and tears. The second year brought exhaustion. Hope became heavy, something I carried rather than embraced. By the third year, hope turned into something fragile and quiet, hidden deep inside me, where it couldn't hurt as much. People began encouraging me to move on. They told me I deserved happiness, that I couldn't wait forever. I tried. I built routines. I focused on work. I learned how to exist in a life that felt incomplete. But no matter how much time passed, a part of me remained suspended in that moment when he walked out the door. I wasn't waiting anymore, yet I never fully let go either. Then, on an ordinary afternoon, everything changed. I was running errands in a town I rarely visited, stopping at a grocery store I'd never been to before. The store was busy, filled with the usual sounds of carts rolling and people talking. I moved through the aisles without thinking, my mind far away. That's when I heard a voice. It wasn't loud or calling for me, but it was familiar in a way that made my heart stumble. At first, I ignored it. Grief can trick you, convincing you that memories are real. But then I heard it again, closer this time. My hands started to shake. Slowly, I turned around. He was standing a few feet away, holding a basket, looking older and thinner, but unmistakably him. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I was certain I had imagined him, that my mind had finally broken under the weight of missing him. But then he looked up, and his eyes met mine. His face drained of color, and the basket slipped from his hands. He said my name softly, as if he was afraid it might disappear if he spoke too loudly. I don't remember how long we stood there. Seconds felt like hours. Tears blurred my vision as I whispered the only thing I could think of. I asked him if he was real. He nodded, his own eyes filling with tears. People around us continued shopping, unaware that two lives had just collided after years of separation. We stepped outside and sat in his car, neither of us knowing where to begin. Eventually, he told me what had happened. There had been an accident, severe enough to leave him hospitalized in another state. He suffered memory loss and confusion. By the time he began to remember pieces of his life, everything had changed. Records were missing. Time had passed. When he finally found the courage to search for me, he believed I had moved on. Listening to him was overwhelming. I felt relief, anger, sadness, and disbelief all at once. Part of me wanted to scream, to ask why he never tried harder to come back. Another part of me was simply grateful that he was alive. We cried, we talked, and we sat in silence, letting the reality of the moment sink in. Reconnecting wasn't easy. Real life doesn't follow the perfect scripts we see in movies. There were difficult conversations and painful truths. Trust had to be rebuilt, slowly and carefully. We took our time, learning who we were now instead of clinging to who we used to be. Some days were hopeful, others were heavy, but each day was honest. Seeing him again taught me something important. Not every disappearance is a choice, and not every silence is intentional. Life can separate people in cruel and unexpected ways, leaving behind misunderstandings that time alone cannot fix. It also taught me that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means accepting what happened and choosing how to move forward. I once believed I would never see him again. I mourned a future that never happened and grieved a loss without an ending. But life surprised me in the most ordinary place, on the most ordinary day. It reminded me that some stories don't end when we think they do. Sometimes, they pause, waiting for the right moment to begin again. This is not just a story about reunion. It's a story about resilience, patience, and the quiet strength it takes to survive unanswered questions. It's about learning to live with uncertainty and discovering that hope can survive even the longest silence. If there is one thing this experience taught me, it's this: never underestimate the power of time and fate. Some connections are stronger than distance, confusion, and even years of separation. And sometimes, when you least expect it, life gives you back what you thought was lost forever. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and share. Thank you for watching Real Life USA Stories.